Alright, going into the main compartment, so we'll be going off of the legend color organization list. First thing on here would be hygiene. You could use the included Velcro straps that they include in the kit. That allows you to wrap this around either the loops or the webbing, moly webbing of a storage pouch. But if all the items are already white in a clear Ziploc bag, it'll be a little bit redundant. So label this with the white hygiene items: hand sanitizer, baby wipes, toothpaste, toothbrush. If you wanted to add floss or any other feminine hygiene products, you could also put all of this in a toiletry kit. Give you a little bit more organization and maybe a little bit more durable than a little thin Ziploc bag, but at least this will help keep any of this stuff from leaking as easily as if it was out just loose in a bag or just floating free in the backpack. Next on the list will be water, so blue. This is a 3-part thing. We've got a Silcock key. If you haven't seen these before, it's 4 different sizes for opening valves and faucets, and Silcocks from like commercial businesses, buildings, from the water spigot, usually on the side of the building. If you're going through a populated urban area, it's a way of probably being able to access clean water. The next is this filtration methods. So mechanical filtration, this little Sawyer Mini. Like we mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you get the full-size 1-liter water bottles with the full-size cap, this Sawyer Mini will actually screw right onto it, and it'll give you a watertight seal. So take the little cap off. It will allow you to fill the water container with questionable quality water, filter it through, whether that's into your Nalgene or into another 1-liter water bottle. You can also squirt it directly into your mouth, and then it's a little more convenient than using the included water bladder and straw. It's also less things you need to pack if you'd like to pack the straw and the water bladder. Obviously that will work as well, but it's just extra things that you need to keep track of and store. And this kind of knocks two birds with one stone. Sawyer Mini, if you haven't seen them before, pretty easy to use. It's basically the same exact technology as a Life Straw. It's just a lot smaller form factor, a little lighter, a little smaller, but they will handle plenty of water for a 48-hour time period. This alone will give you more than enough water if you have unlimited supply of questionable quality water. This technically would be all you need. It's just way faster to bring your own water, and then you're not worried about not being able to access any water for your whole trip home. Additional filtration method is chemical, so these aqua tabs, water purification tablets, they're not nearly as much of an aftertaste as the iodine tabs that we talked about in the previous video, and that we also have packed in here. But just follow the directions on the label, and the tabs included. There's also plenty, way more water filtration than you're ever going to need for a 48-hour time period. It's definitely overkill, but good to have just in case. And then a little bit of additional supplementary water. These emergency water pouches that we talked about before, it's a little over 4 fluid ounces, so if you have 4 of these, 16 ounces, that's what pushes you up from 48 ounces to 33. On top of that, for the 1-liter storage bottle, 16 more on top of that will give you the full 100 ounces for a full 2-day supply of water. Next, after water, we'll go on to shelter. So this is convenient. This is actually a water storage little shoulder pouch. It's got its own little storage compartment, a bunch of moly webbing obviously if you'd like to expand on top of that. If you want to use it for something else, or even putting a water bottle in it, you can keep the straps and then hang it over your shoulder, attach it to your backpack, whatever you want. But it also ended up being very convenient use of being the correct color to identify shelter and housing both my emergency tent and my emergency bivvy. It's big enough to also handle the larger escape bivvy that you can get from Survive Outdoors Longer. And also, if you are planning and most likely expecting to need to leave at least one night on this 48-hour trip to get back home, you're leaving your tent without a flashlight. If you crack one of these chem lights, leave that by your tent, it'll be a lot harder to lose your tent if you're flashlightless, wandering around the forest from having let yourself out of the tent to go take care of business, come back to the tent without getting lost. Maybe something good to have with these shelter supplies. Obviously, if you have any other items you'd like stored in here, whether that's emergency blanket, you can maybe cram one of these, or emergency poncho in there as well. But going along with the color, it ended up being a good choice, a good use of that storage compartment. Both of these we talked about in previous videos. It's obviously a good way of storing items that you don't want to get too hot from being in your car for long periods of time. So things like Bic lighters, maybe smaller battery storage packs, and other things that, like I said, we've already talked about in previous videos. You can go back to that video and watch that if you want to see what type of stuff that's in there. But because of the type of food that we're packing in here, not requiring a whole lot of preparation, I don't see a need for needing a whole lot of fire starting equipment. If you want, obviously a Bic lighter is convenient. There's ferrocerium rods, waterproof matches, but if the goal is to get from where you're stuck to back home in as little time as possible, the less time you have to stop, build a fire, make something to eat, boil water to purify it, the sooner you can get home, the better. Next, we'll go segue from fire into food. So this is just one of the kind of more quick, easy access food items. Some of the same stuff you saw from the previous video, these honey stingers, a lot of good quality carbs, not just empty calories. Nuts. If you'd like to add a little additional calories to your water or cover the taste of low quality water or the iodine tablets that you're using to purify your water, these Gatorade Powder packs. It's 130 calories each. It gives you some extra carbs for the cardio, the long distance walking that you're going to be doing over this 48-hour time period. It also gives you a little bit more taste to your just plain water. Protein wise, these are super convenient. Each one of these things is 24 grams of protein. It's only 130, 120 calories, but it's hard to beat the convenience of these single serving pouches. If you have an Nalgene with a wide open mouth, a wide bottle like that, it's really easy to, they recommend using between 6 and 8 fluid ounces of water and then just shake it. If you've ever used protein powder before, obviously a good idea to rinse out the bottle after you're done using it so it doesn't get too funky. It will get pretty gross even after 48 hours, but maybe ending the day with one and starting the day with another. You're going to be sore the next day after the first 24 hours, and this will help rebuild muscle, help prevent getting too sore, and also long-lasting energy with that much protein. These are also good for protein, just one cookie. It tastes alright, but 16 grams of protein, decent amount of calories though. It's a little bit more carbs than just a protein powder would be. So 420 calories if you eat the whole cookie. The serving size is only half of the cookie, so it's considering the package itself has 2 full servings. At 420 calories, requires 0 prep work. It's a decent source of protein. Also, just regular Cliff Bars, whatever flavor you like. There are the energy versions of Cliff Bars if the goal is for you to stay as highly fueled and energetic as possible to get through this trip as quick as you can, stay awake as long as you can. There are Cliff Bars that have caffeine, like these. Maybe just don't take them right before going to bed, but you can start off the day with them. or extend your hike a little bit longer with things like that. So like I said, that was the easy, quick, zero prep work type food. After going over the first half of the food items, stuff that doesn't require any sort of prep work, we'll go on to the next item, which is clothes and personal items. So some of this, like we talked about before, should be either attached to the outside of the bag so you can quickly change from whatever you wore or were wearing and into something that's more appropriate for the trip you're going to be making. But extra items that you're potentially changing into, whether that's new gloves that are clean and dry, or backup pair of underwear or socks, that kind of stuff can go in here. Neck gaiters. It's going to be hard to fit a hat into a compartment like this, or even the backpack period, because you're sort of running out of space. Space is a little bit of a premium with this much gear, but if you're going to do a baseball style back or a hat or a boonie style hat, that stuff that all can go in here in the bungee strap of the backpack. For your socks can definitely go in here. They don't take up a whole lot of space. But with socks, I definitely recommend doing something good quality. At least one pair, if not two, of good quality boot socks. Something that's comfortable. Your feet will definitely thank you. We've talked about these Harbor Freight brand gloves, better than nothing, but if you'd like to get something a little nicer, the mechanics gloves, they're a little bit better fit, maybe a little more durable, a little more comfortable, and they're not that much more expensive. Next item on here, it doesn't actually correlate correctly with the color coding kit. Obviously, that would be red if I was talking through first aid items and basing it strictly off of the colors going off of the kit, but hard to miss. Pretty obvious what this is if it says medical kit right on the front of it. I've made a couple videos on how you can either build your own or what to look for in a pre-made kit. If the goal of this backpack is to be as lightweight and streamlined as possible, then maybe something like the ultralight watertight medical kit for between 1 to 2 people for 1 to 4 days. Specifically, something like this would be pretty convenient. Depending on what it has, you might want to supplement it with things like moleskin. So look through what your kit has and think through what you might like to add to it if it doesn't have every possible thing you could think of. The last thing in the main compartment is the exact same style food compartment we talked about in the 24-hour get home bag video. So obviously it's dense, got some water pouches, oatmeal, Lifeboat survival rations, stuff like that. Obviously pretty heavy, so it'd be good to put it at the bottom of the pack. This also does not require any sort of prep work to make any of the food in here, but it's a good way of keeping yourself fueled for if your trip turns into something longer than 48 hours. We can talk now about ways to like expand or supplement your kit from everything we've talked through so far. Food-wise, stuff like this that requires absolutely no prep work would be definitely convenient. It's already pre-cooked, it's ready to eat. It does not require adding any sort of water. It's not a ton of calories, but at least it's good quality. It'll last for a while. It's easy to open, easy to eat on the go. If you want to stop and eat, you can. If you're going to be bringing things like this, as long as you have room for it, make sure you have a spoon or a spork to actually eat it with. You can also do things like Spam singles or tuna packets. Tuna packets are definitely a good source of protein. They're pretty good tasting and they're very slim, easy to pack. And if you don't like tuna, this really overly seasoned hot buffalo style makes, at least in my opinion, it makes tuna edible. But you can see 15 grams protein, 15 grams protein and 70 calories, so a good amount of protein, healthy food. Keep you fueled for the trip. Going back to shelter, if the escape bivvy ultra lightweight basic survival shelter kits are going to be insufficient based on your situation. You can buy a little bit more thorough version with tons of things like instructions on how to build different types of shelters. Have things like tent stakes and paracord, a little bit better or heavy duty survival blanket, emergency blanket. That's actually providing you the actual shelter portion of the shelter kit. It obviously takes up a little bit more space than the lightweight survival bivvies like we talked about in the previous video. But if you have space for it and you need it, then these are definitely good quality, easy to use. It might be a good idea to bring a headlamp. Easy to get to, a little bit better quality, very slim, lightweight version of it. These Columbia ones, they're cheap. They're not as cheap as the bulk headlamps you can get off of Amazon like that, but they're a lot smaller form factor, less likely to get in the way when you're trying to use it, and they're easier to pack. You shouldn't need a ton of light output, although if you'd like, all sorts of different brands, but this is only 25 lumens, which is enough. They got obviously bigger or higher capacity versions, but based on the type of thing that you're going to be using it for, you shouldn't need a ton of light. The more light they put out, the less the battery is going to last unless you start supplementing with larger batteries. In conclusion, there's obviously a lot more gear here than there was in the first Get Home Bag video. You can take only the items from that first backpack and just add more water, and you can definitely reasonably expect to comfortably make it home in 48 hours. Water is definitely the most important thing you need to expand upon to extend that hour or day capacity beyond 24 onto 48 or even 72. Like I said, the 100-ounce 3-liter guideline is bare minimum. Ideally, you'd be doing closer to 64 ounces per day, so 8 ounces 8 times a day, and that's just without any sort of exertion involved in walking such long distances with a fairly heavy pack over whatever sort of terrain you're expecting to encounter. There's a big difference between this 2-day long hike that you're making to get back home and being like in a lifeboat survival situation where stuff like this recommends that you completely skip water entirely for the first 24 hours. And then from there on, it's suggesting that 8 ounces a day minimum is sufficient. That's definitely not going to be the case. If you've ever been dehydrated and tried to do a hike or any sort of physical exertion the next day, I promise that you are not going to do very well. You're going to drastically reduce the amount of miles you can travel, and you're also going to drastically reduce the amount of weight you can carry. And that's best case scenario. Worst case scenario is that you're putting yourself at risk health-wise. So recommend doing the full 64 ounces the first day, and then trying to top off your water throughout that next day so that you can meet or exceed the 64 ounces the next day as well. If you shortchange yourself on water, you're definitely going to be dehydrated, but there's a little bit of a difference between being dehydrated and still not yet home and dehydrated at home with a larger quantity, better, easier access to water